Alright, let's talk about the 8th chapter, Watchmen Ch. First, here's the plot. From the beginning of the story, it starts with a phone call from Hollis Mason to Sally Jupiter to talk about their old times served as the Minutemen. There are several weaving storylines in this chapter, and one of them is Laurie and Dan's rescue for Rorschach from the Sing Sing prison. Just a side note, the Sing Sing Correction Facility is actually a real prison situated only 30 miles north from New York City. Meanwhile, Detective Stephen Fine led another investigation on the new night owl operations, which in the end led to the police raid on the apartment of Dan. But they failed to arrest Dan and Laurie. Dr. Manhattan returned from Mars and took Laurie with her. In the end of the story, mob broke into Hollis Mason's apartment and beat him to death. So the themes in this chapter. Firstly, the ride on Armageddon, which means the ultimate war in the end of the world. In this context, we can understand this story as the ultimate nuclear war between the United States and the USSR. And it's really important to consider the superheroes' role in this ultimate nuclear war. On the one hand, they were restricted by the federal government according to the King Act, that they cannot openly operate in public anymore. And on the other hand, they actually have this personal vulnerability going on, that they have to keep their identity covered and cannot be discovered by other third parties. And this actually reflected by the death of Hollis Mason, who was actually found by the gangs in New York City, and the gangs actually thought the old man was actually the guy who actually conducted the new operations of Night Owl in New York City. Second is the commercials of nostalgia. This perfume and this brand actually served as the whole theme for all the characters' remembrance of the past. And according to its advertisements, you can see in this frame how the ghosts of Ukraine, by thinking about the good old times, the characters, the superheroes actually are constructing kind of a utopia to something that they actually long for, that is really different and maybe the opposite to the ongoing Cold War situation. Thirdly, it's the dress-up scene in Halloween, and as Laura said in this scene, she actually doesn't really like that suited kind of operations. And on the other hand, the kids, they're dressing up, as you all know, in Halloween for trick and treat and other games. So in this context, we may kind of deduct the fact that it might be really naive for these superheroes to dress up as the superhero in their own minds to conduct all these rescue and other operations in the name of vigilance. Fourthly, vengeance and karma. In page 27, we can see that Hollis Mason was beaten to death because the gangs in New York City found his identity as the first night owl, and he's actually taking the consequences for the second night owl, Dan's operation, and this violence actually led to his very death. And secondly, Rorschach's retaliation in the prison, which led to the death of a big figure, kind of reflects the other vengeance theme that was reflected by the storyline of in the Tales of Black Freighter we're going to talk about. So in this scene, it's talking about the oblivion part of this character's story. After the story, his family and children, he's looking for more revenge on the men who conducted this act. And in the end of this part of the story, in the chapter, we can see the determination of revenge that the character actually made up. He's actually kind of a sociopath and kind of antisocial character, with which we can actually relate to Osmandia's mentality in this scene as he sort of planning on this rescue or even partly destruction of the whole world in order to prevent the Cold War and to make a so-called utopia in his own mind. Now let's talk about the symbols in Chapter 8. First is still the nostalgia perfume Sally uses at her home. You can see the connections that nostalgia stands for between the now and the past. Sally still really cherishes the good old days she had with her friends in all the anti-criminal vigilante operations. But still, the perfume's characteristic is always evaporating, as in Sally's memory, the good old past days is actually fading away from her own life. Next is the relationship between the first and second Night Owl. While Hollis Mason is making that jack-o'-lantern for Halloween decoration, Laurie and Dan, they are planning to carry out another operation in the rescue of Rorschach from the prison. As Dan starts the owl ship, you can see the kind of similarity between the ship of the jack-o'-lantern and the owl ship, and this is actually a link between the ending of the first generation Night Owl and the beginning of another new generation of vigilante operations, and there are actually many differences between these two distinct generations. Lastly, the death of Hollis Mason. The goons, one of the top knots used the Night Owl trophy to beat Hollis Mason to death, and this is actually stands for a sort of karma that results in Hollis Mason's own death, even though he's trying his best to evade this fixed destiny that's already written on his life. So this kind of spiritual principle, which kind of stands for the cause and effects, actually is something that Hollis Mason cannot escape from his own fate. Now, Nepenthe Garden that Sally lives in her retirement. This is a term from Greek mythology which stands for drug of forgetfulness, which is even can be considered sort of antidepressant that leads you to this state of happiness and forgetfulness. Sally is using this method to avoid everything she's done before as a superhero and try to lead another sort of normal life. In the end, we can combine Hollis Mason and Sally Jupiter's experience in the retirement together. On the one hand, Hollis Mason trying to, while paying attention to the current politics and the international relations, he's still trying to avoid this superhero conducts and trying to lead a normal retirement life. Like, for example, he's writing a memoir like Under the Hood and trying to start a mechanic shop as he's done in his childhood. And for Sally, she's just living in this retirement resort and try to avoid this outside world from whatever she's done before with her vigilant friends. And together, these two kind of ways of retirement actually reflect their own coping mechanism to actually escape from the past, from their vigilant life. But still, they cannot escape from the fate as superheroes in the past, and the consequences, the cause and effects, will always come back to them now to haunt them for the rest of their lives.